Hi, I'm Dave,
And I'm Gideon.
and this is Strength Through Weakness. Who's the bad guy in the Fall of Man?
The serpent, also known as Lucifer.
And then what about the man and the woman? What about Adam and Eve? They're not the bad guys?
Well, the Adam and Eve, I consider them as the middle character. They're not the hero. God is the hero of everything, right? But then the villain is the serpent, right?
I kind of see it as Adam and Eve are kind of bad guys because they start on God's side and then they end opposed to God. And so in that, they're traitors, which is not usually considered to be a good guy.
No.
Well, the serpent is certainly also a bad guy. Adam and Eve, they abandon their friendship with God. In fact, the serpent comes in and the first thing he does is he questions things that God said. And the Bible later on, it tells us that the woman was deceived. Was Adam deceived?
Adam was deceived by the woman.
By the woman. He was actually technically not deceived, but you're
Well,
right there. The Bible tells us that he gave way to the woman.
I disagree because when he gave way to the woman, she was saying, eat this, and if he was deceived, he possibly could known that was fruit and say, when she was saying, eat this, why would he eat that if she wasn't manipulating him somehow or deceiving him somehow? He could have thought it was like a normal fruit.
He could have, but what about the idea that he just chose the woman over God?
That would make him a bad guy.
Would make him a bad guy. And in fact, the Bible outright says that Adam was not deceived, that Eve was deceived and Adam was not deceived. And that's not to say that either of them were better or worse. It's to say that really the fall was a complete fall of humanity. You have the woman falling to deception and the man falling really to just an outright defiance. And so between the two things, you have like that complete disregard for God. Adam also has that he was given a very specific calling to, what was his calling?
His calling was to the land.
To the land and all the creatures, right? He was to
Yes.
subdue the earth. And so he was in charge. So was he in charge of the serpent?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he was in charge of the serpent. So he really, by all rights, he could have told the serpent to leave. He had the authority over the animals, and it was his job to protect and make sure that people did what they were supposed to, or made sure the animals did what they were supposed to. And this particular serpent was outright lying and being deceitful, and he was defaming God. And that certainly would have fallen under Adam's authority. What do you think? Did they get punished for what they did?
Yes, they did. They made it so, as it says in chapter 3, it's chapter 3 and it starts at around the 11. It will say how the serpent is punished, and then it says to the woman, at 16, it says, to the woman he said, I will greatly increase your pains in childbearing. With pain you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And then in 17 it goes on to explain Adam, but in 16 that obviously shows how the woman is affected, and then it's how Adam is affected by getting cursed and having it so the ground is a lot harder for it to just be sown, and that there's going to be weeds that choke out the plants.
So all three of them are punished, and ultimately that shows you kind of who the bad guys are. Adam and Eve were also punished just through the sheer consequence of what they had done. Their eyes were opened. Now they are different. They're altered. They're, as we call, fallen. They actually see a lot of the negative aspects of what sin does. They see a different side of the world that actually they helped bring into being. They are no longer allowed to eat of the tree of life, which sustained them, which would keep them from dying. So now they are going to experience a physical death, which was a huge part of the conversation with the serpent, right? The serpent was lying to them and telling them, "You will not surely die," right?
Yeah.
Did they surely die?
Yes, they surely died after 900 years.
Yeah, last time I checked, Adam and Eve are currently not alive on this planet, so they surely died.
There was a signing in France, but I don't know if that's true.
In closing, what do you think? What's the takeaway for us in today's world from the fall?
That we all sin, and that the only way that we can get out of this is through Jesus Christ. And if we were put into this situation, we would have all failed, and that we're just as bad as them because we sin multiple times. If we were put in the same situation as Adam and Eve, we wouldn't have gotten out. Hell, we probably would have been worse in all reality.
I definitely agree with him on that. I also have to say that as believers today, it's important to recognize that sin is not some weird, just unidentifiable thing. Sin is ultimately choosing against God, whether that's due to deception, right? Eve was deceived into thinking that what God had said was not true, or into Adam's point of view, where whether it was just a lack of no longer wanting to lead and do his job, or whether it was the simple fact of wanting to console his wife in what she had chosen. Not really sure, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, he chose against God, she chose against God, and we do this every time we sin. Anything that we do, whatever that looks like,
That's
when we
God.
choose against God.
And remember, sin is not unidentified. We know multiple types of sins and what sin is, so it is not a UBO. Do not mistake this for a UFO.
A UBO. What's a UBO?
Unidentified bad object. It's not.
That's it for this week, right? Like, share, subscribe, do whatever you can to help the channel. If you can do it on YouTube and Facebook, that would be awesome.
Maybe what you
Signing
could do
out.
is